Hi, and welcome back to another episode of Macbeth Explained, the Annotate With Me series. In today's video, we'll be looking at Act 5, Scene 1. It's a fairly short scene, but it's a really important scene. Definitely one of the key scenes that you want to be revising, a scene that is very likely to come up in an exam. It's a scene... It's probably the only true Lady Macbeth scene. The scene is literally just about her, what she has done. It's the sort of almost conclusion of her character arc. And this is where we see the biggest change in her character. This is where the message of the play about the cost of guilt and the cost of ambition really sort of comes into the light. And so, as usual, if you'd like to go grab anything that you need, copy of the text, pens, highlighters, etc., we will be annotating this scene in quite a lot of detail, as you can see from my annotations. So without further ado, I'll get started and press play when you're ready. Act 5, Scene 1, Dunsinane anteroom in the castle. So it's like a small sort of side room in the castle. Enter a doctor of physic and a waiting gentlewoman. So a waiting gentlewoman, just for a quick explanation, it would be like a noblewoman, so maybe the wife of a lord, something like that, a woman of quite high rank who would be tasked with almost like looking after the queen. So if you were a very high social rank, especially if you were a queen, you would have like waiting women or ladies in waiting. And these were women who would be not like servants, but like sort of like companions looking after you. So we've got the waiting gentlewoman of a Lady Macbeth and a doctor talking. The doctor says, "I have 2 nights watched with you, but can perceive no truth in your report. When was it she last walked?" So here he's implying that the lady in waiting, the gentlewoman, has told him that Lady Macbeth has been sleepwalking, and he's saying, "Well, I've waited with you 2 whole nights, and she's not done anything that you've described. When was it that she last sleepwalked?" The gentlewoman says, "Since His Majesty went into the field," and she means battlefield, so since Macbeth went off to war, "I have seen her rise from her bed, throw her nightgown upon her, unlock her closet, take forth paper, fold it, write upon it, read it, afterwards seal it, and again return to bed, yet all this while in a most fast sleep." So while Lady Macbeth has been asleep, she's been getting up, getting dressed, getting a piece of paper, writing on it, reading it, folding it, hiding it away. And this aspect of her sleepwalking, this thing that she does, isn't really mentioned again, and it's never really brought up by Shakespeare again. But it could be, we find out later on in the scene that Lady Macbeth is reliving key events that sort of are the root cause of her trauma. Amid these events are, of course, the murder of King Duncan, as well as the feast scene. But here, she could be reliving the moment when she read Macbeth's letter. Because if we think about this moment in terms of Lady Macbeth's character arc, this is really the catalyst for her story, for her character arc in Macbeth. For Macbeth, the catalyst, the event that kickstarts his story and his character arc, is of course meeting the witches. For Lady Macbeth, it's receiving his letter. It's him telling her about the witches and her picking up on his secret desire to be king. And so, because this is such an important event in her life, this could be why she's reliving it while she's sleepwalking. Another sort of important thing to note here is that the gentlewoman says she has been doing this since His Majesty went into the battlefield, so since Macbeth has left. And this really, I mean, we already know how close the relationship is between Macbeth and Lady Macbeth, and we've already seen the way the murders, the crimes that they've committed have sort of eroded or put stress or pressure on their relationship. But here we can tell that Lady Macbeth, well, I mean, she's basically implying that Lady Macbeth only really breaks, like her mental state only really breaks down after Macbeth has left, has set off to war. And this is definitely the sort of point where she can no longer keep herself together, which is really interesting, especially if you're writing about the relationship between Macbeth and Lady Macbeth. The doctor says, "A great perturbation in nature, to receive at once the benefit of sleep and do the effects of watching." He's saying it's unnatural to sleepwalk, basically, to receive the benefits of sleep, to be asleep, but the effects of watching, but act like you're awake. And again, this links really well with the theme of the disruption of the natural order. As we've already seen, if you've been watching all the videos so far, there are many scenes, many characters that mention things being unnatural, things going against nature, and this is another thing that goes against nature, another disruption of the natural order caused by the regicide of King Duncan. The fact that she's sleeping, but she's acting as if she's awake. He says, in this slumbery agitation, besides her walking and other actual performances, what at any time have you heard her say? So the doctor is saying, apart from the things that you've seen her do, has she said anything while she was sleepwalking? The gentlewoman says, that, sir, which I will not report after. Yes, she said something, but I'm not going to repeat it. The doctor says, you may to me, and 'tis most meet you should. Like, you probably, if you're going to tell anyone, you should probably tell me, says the doctor. The gentlewoman says, neither to you nor anyone, having no witness to confirm my speech. She's saying, because I was the only one that was there, and I'm the only person that heard what she said, I'm not going to repeat it because there's no other witness. Now, she could be saying this in the sense that she doesn't want, like, we know that she's probably heard some pretty heavy stuff, stuff that would definitely implicate Macbeth and Lady Macbeth in some pretty terrible crimes. And maybe the lady in waiting rightfully doesn't want to say anything without having other witnesses to back it up. But also we know at this point in the play that Macbeth's rule has pretty much turned into a tyranny or a sort of dictatorship, and everyone is sort of afraid to speak up. It would be very risky for her to sort of reveal some of the things that Lady Macbeth has said, especially if she can't back it up. Enter Lady Macbeth with a taper. So Lady Macbeth comes in and she's sleepwalking and she's holding a candle. The gentlewoman carries on. She says, lo, you, here she comes. Like, lo is like an expression of, like, almost like an exclamation, like, hey, you. So she's saying, oh, look, here she comes. This is her very guise. Like, this is the way she's always acting. And upon my life, fast asleep. Observe her stand close. She's saying, come closer, look at her. I'm telling you, she's dead asleep right now. The doctor says, how came she by that light? Where did she find the candle? The gentlewoman says something really important. She says, why, it stood by her. She has light by her continually. 'Tis her command. She's saying the candle was next to her, probably when she fell asleep. She's saying it's her order, it's her command that there's always light on near her. And this is really important because, of course, we already know at this point in the play that darkness is a really important motif in Macbeth. It's a motif that's associated with the ideas of evil, murder, of concealment, of the supernatural. Everything that's sort of negative and evil in the play is associated, is hidden and kept secret by darkness. And, of course, early on in the text, Lady Macbeth herself calls on that darkness, doesn't she? She says, come, thick night. She even asks the night to be darker. She says, pour thee with the dunnest smoke of hell, that my knife see not the wound it makes. She literally says she wants the night to be so dark that her knife can't even see the thing that is going to hurt or to stab. Now, though, Lady Macbeth has completely changed her perspective and her attitude. Was at the beginning she's talking about wanting the night to be darker and she's calling down that darkness so she can use it. Now she's fearful of that darkness. She always wants light around her. She doesn't want the darkness to be around her. This could be because she sort of knows, you know, if you're someone that uses darkness to do bad things, it might be that you fear that darkness is going to be used against you, in the same way that Macbeth is very paranoid about committing acts of violence and having them committed against him. But also later on, she will clarify this when she will talk about hell. And we'll get into that quote later on when we get to it. But if you're sort of having an essay, if you're writing an essay that's sort of based on the theme or the motif of darkness, really good quote for this. If you're doing an essay that's about Lady Macbeth, her change, her character arc, this is a really good sort of way of showing her change. The doctor says, you see her eyes are open. The gentlewoman says, aye, but their sense is shut. The doctor says, oh, but look, her eyes are open. And the gentlewoman says, yeah, but she can't see, like she's dead asleep. Her eyes are open, but she's like dead to the world. The doctor says, what is it she does now? Look how she rubs her hand. He's saying, oh, what's she doing? She's like rubbing her hands. The gentlewoman says, it is an accustomed action with her to seem thus washing her hands. I have known her continue in this a quarter of an hour. So she's saying actually she's really used to this. She's constantly washing her hands while she's sleepwalking. I've even seen her do it for like 15 minutes in one go, just trying to wash her hands. And this, of course, links another really sort of key bit of information. There's other quotes that you can use for the idea of Lady Macbeth washing her hand. There's the out damned spot, will these hands never be clean? So you can use any of these quotes, but they all make the same point. They are all there to contrast with Lady Macbeth's reaction on the night of Duncan's murder. And if you remember, on the night of Duncan's murder, it's Macbeth who's actually concerned about being unable to wash his hands. And Lady Macbeth specifically tells him, a little water clears us of this deed. She's saying all we need is a bit of water to wash the blood off, and that will clear us of the deed. Then we don't need to worry about it anymore. Whereas here, it's literally the opposite. No matter how much she tries to wash the blood off her hands, the blood that, by the way, isn't even there, it's just on her conscience more than anything, nothing will wash this blood away. And again, another really, really great moment to show us the contrast between Lady Macbeth at the beginning of the play and Lady Macbeth now. How much she has changed, how much what she has done has taken a toll on her and her mental health. Lady Macbeth finally speaks. She says, yet, here's a spot, and yet, no matter how hard she's washing her hands, there's still, her hands are still stained, like a spot, like a stain on her hands. The doctor says, hark, listen, she speaks. I will set down what comes from her to satisfy my remembrance the more strongly. He's saying, oh, she's talking. I'm going to write down what she says so I can remember it more clearly. Lady Macbeth says, out, damned spot, out, I say. So she's speaking to the blood on her hands. She wants it gone. She wants it out. And again, this links her to Macbeth, who also struggles with the feeling of his hands never being clean after he's killed Duncan. And she's in this scene, so you can tell there's lots of dashes, lots of exclamations, lots of short sentences, really disjointed. It feels like she's reliving several moments. So she's in the moment now trying to wash her hands. Then she says, 1, 2, why then? 'Tis time to do it. And here we can tell that she's moved back in time. She's reliving the night of Duncan's murder when she tells Macbeth, right, it's time for us. Duncan is asleep, the guards are passed out, time to kill him. And then we cut back to her present fears, where she says hell is murky. Murky is a word that usually means dark, dim, gloomy, when you can't see really clearly. So again, we've got the motif of darkness, but this time she's saying hell is dark. And this is the crux of what Lady Macbeth is going through right now. Lady Macbeth has always come across to us as being a fearless character, a dauntless character. She isn't afraid of anything. She's not easily intimidated. She's not easily shocked. She very much drives the couple, her and Lady Macbeth. She's very much the driving force there. But here we see her really feel fear, and that fear is spiritual. Now, of course, at the time when this was written, everyone would be Christian, everyone would believe in the idea of heaven and hell, of God, etc. And so everything that she did at the beginning, she did knowing the consequences. But there's a sense that she almost pushed those aside. Now, the consequences feel very real to her. She doesn't say hell is going to be dark. Hell is going to be murky. She's saying hell is murky. There's a sense that she feels like she's either already there or she's going there very soon. The consequences of her actions, the fact that she's going to hell, it feels very real to her now. Of course, this could be foreshadowing her death, or it could be showing us that her state of mind right now is the hell. Her punishment for killing King Duncan, and Macbeth's as well, actually, their punishment comes well before they die and they go to hell, which is definitely a point that Shakespeare is making. The guilt is really the punishment in the play. It's not the fact that they're going to hell. It's not even their death. Their guilt and the suffering that they go through, the trauma that they suffer from after what they've done, is really the punishment for what they've done. So she says, hell is murky. Fie, my lord, fie. A soldier unafraid. And here she's moving back in time, talking to Macbeth, when she's telling him to be more courageous and not to be nervous, when he says, and should we fail and all that stuff. She's recalling this, and she's kind of, again, talking to Macbeth. Fie is an expression of dismissal, oh, come on, my lord, a soldier unafraid. She says, what need we fear? Who knows it? When none can call our power to account. Why should we care who knows what we've done when no one can question our power? So again, she's kind of talking to Macbeth here. She says, and now she moves back to talking to herself. And she's talking about, again, the night of Duncan's murder. She says, yet, who would have thought the old man to have so much blood in him? Really important quotation here. Of course, we know that guilt sorry, that blood symbolizes guilt in all of Macbeth. Blood as well as darkness is a recurring motif. It's a really, really important motif. It's a symbol, a key symbol in Macbeth. And we also know, because we saw her reaction straight away after she came back from Duncan's room. If you remember, we spoke about it before. She says, a little water cleanses of this deed. She comes back as well. She says her hands are bloody. She tells Macbeth, my hands are of your colour now, so my hands are as bloody as yours. And she says, but I would shame to wear a heart so white. And she tells him, when she comes back from planting the daggers on the guards and she has seen Duncan's body, she doesn't show any shock. She doesn't show any remorse. She basically says to Macbeth, well, look, I've got blood on my hands as well now, but I'd be embarrassed to be as shameful and guilty as you. Whereas now it's completely the opposite. We see that her seeing Duncan's dead body wasn't something that she could just brush aside. It's something that stayed with her. It's something that deeply traumatized her. It's something that she can't stop thinking about now. And so whether she never felt this guilt until now, or whether she always felt this guilt and buried it deep down, that's up to you to sort of interpret her actions and make your own decision based on what you think about her character. But this is a really important quote to show us that when she saw Duncan's corpse, it definitely had an effect on her. The doctor says, do you mark that? Oh God, did you hear that? Lady Macbeth carries on. She says, the Thane of Faith had a wife. Where is she now? She's asking herself a question. She could be asking Macbeth. It's hard to tell which bits are addressed to herself or to Macbeth. But this is also really important because Lady Macbeth mentions 2 murders. We know for a fact that Macbeth has killed more than one person. He's killed Duncan, he's killed Banquo, he tried to kill Banquo's son, he's killed Macduff's entire family, and of course he killed more people. That's implied through what the other characters say when they talk about his tyranny. But Lady Macbeth only mentions 2 murders. She talks about Duncan when she says the old man, who would have thought the old man would have so much blood in him, and she mentions the Thane of Fife, and the Thane of Fife's wife. So she says the Thane of Fife had a wife, where is she now? And so mentioning Duncan's death makes complete sense because Lady Macbeth does have responsibility for Duncan's death. She orchestrated his murder. She literally persuaded Macbeth to go through with it, and she took active part in hiding it. But Lady Macduff's death is probably a death that she wasn't even aware of, because in the scenes where Macbeth is sort of deciding what he's going to do about Macduff, that's actually straight after he's spoken to the witches. He's not even talked to Lady Macbeth about this. So Lady Macbeth would probably not even have known about the orders that Macbeth gave to have Macduff's family killed. And yet, this is a murder that she brings up. The Thane of Fife had a wife. Where is she now? This could be because this is the first sort of woman that Macbeth has killed, and Lady Macbeth might be able to relate to her more. Or this could be because, you know, Lady Macduff is like Macbeth. It could be because she relates to her, or it could be because killing a woman that literally could not have harmed Macbeth. Like, there's literally nothing Lady Macduff really could have done. This could also sort of weigh on Lady Macbeth's mind. Of course, you could say the same about the children, and she doesn't actually mention Macduff's children, which is really interesting. She just mentions his wife, which, you know, really shows us that this feels closer to home for Lady Macbeth as another woman. She says, what, will these hands never be clean? So another really good quote for her inability to wash her hands, which links really well and contrasts really well with her earlier quotes. She says, no more of that, my lord, no more of that. You are all with this starting, like you're ruining everything with your, like you're starting your shocked expressions. And here we see that she's reliving, this time not Duncan's murder, but the night of the feast, where Macbeth is seeing the ghost and he's acting, you know, completely horrified and shocked in front of everyone, and Lady Macbeth is trying to gain control of the situation. So she's reliving that. She's again talking to Macbeth. She's telling him, like, stop, you're ruining the party with your behaviour. The doctor says, go to, you have known what you should not. And the doctor feels like, oh no, the lady in waiting, that the gentlewoman is hearing things that she definitely shouldn't be hearing, because Lady Macbeth is essentially sort of admitting or very heavily hinting at the murders. The gentlewoman says she has spoke what she should not. I'm sure of that. Heaven knows what she has known. The gentlewoman is saying, she's saying things that she's not. She's realised that Lady Macbeth is giving away things that she's not meant to. And she realises that Lady Macbeth probably has a lot of secrets that she's been keeping that are now sort of slipping out while she's asleep. Lady Macbeth continues and says, "Here's the smell of the blood still. All the perfumes of Arabia will not sweeten this little hand. Oh, oh, oh." And she sort of is haunted by not just the stain of blood on her hands, but the smell of it as well, the very visceral, real smell of the blood, which she would know what it smells like because, again, she went back to Duncan's room to plant the daggers that night. This is a really good quote, and this links her really well with Macbeth, who comes up with a really similar quote earlier on when he talks about Neptune's great oceans, and he talks about all the waters in the oceans. If he used them to wash his hands, wouldn't wash his hands. Instead, his hands would turn the oceans red. It's the same here. She's saying all the perfumes of Arabia would not sweeten this little hand. All the perfumes of Arabia, which would have been known at the time to be really sweet, strong-smelling perfumes, would not be enough to hide the smell of the blood. The doctor says, "What a sigh is there? The heart is solely charged." So the doctor here is realizing that Lady Macbeth has a lot on her mind, a lot that she's been keeping secret. And he is realizing that her illness, the reason that she's unwell, isn't physical. She's not physically sick. This is coming from her mind, from her heart, from her soul. He realizes that the damage is psychological, not physical. The gentlewoman says, "I would not have such a heart in my bosom for the dignity of the whole body." She's saying, there's nothing in this world that would make me want to have the heart that she has. Like, I wouldn't want to have to carry the weight that she's carrying. And there's a sense of pity here from both the doctor and the gentlewoman from what they're hearing. The doctor says, well, well, well. He's like trying to think of something to say. And the gentlewoman says, "Pray God it be so. Like, I hope it will be well. Like, I hope things will be fine." The doctor says that this disease is beyond my practice. Yeah, there's really nothing he can do about this. He's, a doctor. He's meant to help with physical illnesses. Like, he realizes that this is something to do with her mind. There's not much he can do to help. Yet I have known those who have walked in their sleep, who have died holily in their beds. He's saying, I have known patients who have been sleepwalking and didn't do anything wrong, yet died holily, like have been holy, have had good, like, moral and spiritual behavior. So he's saying, maybe she hasn't done anything wrong, but they both sort of know the truth at this point. Lady Macbeth says, "Wash your hands, put on your nightgown, look not so pale. I tell you yet again, Banquo's buried. He cannot come out to one's grave." So she's saying, again, she's gone back to talking to Macbeth, and she is again reliving the night of the feast. When she's trying to calm Macbeth down, she's trying to reassure him that Banquo's dead and buried, and he can't come back out of his grave to haunt or hurt Macbeth. The doctor says, "Even so, like, did you hear this?" So here she's sort of kind of mentioned Duncan, she's mentioned Lady Macduff, she's mentioned Banquo, and the fact that she's mentioned all these things is, sort of hinting very heavily that her and Macbeth had something to do with all these deaths. Finally, Lady Macbeth says, "To bed, to bed." There's knocking at the gate, and here she's reliving, she's gone back to this time, the night of Duncan's murder, when Macbeth and Lady Macbeth heard the knocking at the gate, and this told them they need to go to bed and pretend they were asleep. "Come, come, 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 give me your hand. What's done cannot be undone. To bed, to bed, to bed." And she leaves. She goes to sleep in her head, or her memories, or her nightmares or dreams, or whatever she's going through right now with Macbeth. She takes his hand. She says, "What's done cannot be undone." This is a really, really important quote. It's another quote that contrasts with an earlier quote. So far with the key contrast, we have the darkness that she summons earlier and the light that she's craving for now. We have the washing, the fact that at the beginning she says she only needs a bit of water to wash what she's done of her hands, and now the fact that she can't clean her hands. And then, of course, we have what's done cannot be undone. Earlier on in the text, she tells Macbeth what's done is done. And these quotes are very similar. They mean the same thing, really. They mean, the truth, which is when you've done something, you can't take it back. But when she says what's done is done, the tone of it is different. It's assertive. It's what's done is done. It doesn't express regret. It doesn't express remorse. It just expresses the idea that they've done something bad and now they just need to move on from it. Whereas the quote, "What's done cannot be undone," the fact that she's saying we can't take back what we did, shows the complete shift in the way that she thinks about it, in the way that she talks about what she's done. Because what's done cannot be undone implies regret, implies remorse, implies that she wishes that it could be undone. And this tells us either that Lady Macbeth always felt this way, or that she has completely changed her perspective. The guilt that she was not feeling earlier or pretending not to feel has definitely caught up with her. Now she, just like Macbeth expresses, she wishes that she hadn't done what she did. She leaves. And this is the last time we'll see Lady Macbeth in the text. So when she talks about going to bed, many people interpret that as her saying she wants to go to sleep permanently. She wants to die. The doctor says, pardon me, will she go now to bed? Is she going to back to bed now? The gentlewoman says, yeah, directly, yeah, she's going straight back to bed. The doctor says, foul whisperings are abroad, unnatural deeds do breed unnatural troubles. Yeah, doing things that are unnatural will manifest in problems that are unnatural. He's basically hinting at the fact that Lady Macbeth is exhibiting this strange unnatural behavior because she did something wrong. Infected minds to their deaf pillows will discharge their secrets. He's saying when minds are kind of infected or poisoned with really bad things that the person has done, often these people want to unburden themselves and let go of their secrets in their pillows. Because when you're asleep, no one, if you're speaking to your pillow, or if you're speaking at night or you're asleep, there's no one there to sort of hear you. In this case, for Lady Macbeth, is very much not true, but he's saying guilty people kind of need to relieve their minds, sometimes the secrets. More needs she the divine than the physician. He's saying she needs the divine more than a doctor. She needs God or spiritual help more than a doctor. And of course this is accurate because we know that Lady Macbeth is scared of going to hell, but we also know that Macbeth and Lady Macbeth are very much both beyond God's help now. They've, we know from the fact that Macbeth can't even pray that there's nothing they can really do now spiritually to seek help. The doctor says, God forgive us all. Look after her. Remove from her the means of all annoyance. He's saying to the gentlewoman, make sure you look after her. Make sure you remove any objects that she might cause her discomfort, or maybe a hurt that she might use to hurt herself, and still keep eyes upon her and always keep watch on her. So good night. My mind she has mated and amazed my sight. She's completely blown his mind and amazed him. What he's witnessed has really sort of shaken him. I think but dare not speak. Here, he's basically saying that he knows, he more or less can work out exactly why Lady Macbeth is suffering this way, what she has done, what's happened, but he does not speak it. And of course, we know that Macbeth's tyranny at the moment makes people really fearful of speaking, even the truth, because people are being accused of treason left, right, and centre. So even though the doctor kind of has worked out what the problem is and what's going on, he doesn't dare say it out loud because he knows that anyone could be accused of treason, and this is of course a very, very sensitive matter. The gentlewoman says, good night, good doctor, and they all leave, and this is the end of this scene. After that, we'll be going back to Macbeth, the battle, and we'll be sort of ramping up to the end of the play. But this is our final scene with Lady Macbeth. It's really important because it's the sort of conclusion of her arc. It's guilt finally catching up with her, and it's her punishment. Lady Macbeth did something bad, no one can deny it, and she has been punished for it. Before she dies, before she goes to hell, she is being punished right now. She's suffering. She's not a happy woman. She's not enjoying being queen the way she maybe imagined that she would. And so this is a really important scene. I highly encourage you to know this scene really well and form your opinion on it. Do we feel sympathy for her? Does she deserve this? What is Shakespeare really saying about ambition and guilt here? Because if you are talking about Lady Macbeth for an essay, the relationship between Macbeth and Lady Macbeth, you are very likely to mention this scene. I would highly encourage you to do so. So as usual, I hope that this was helpful. If you have any questions about the scene in particular, the act, the play, Lady Macbeth, character arcs, exam questions, I know exam season is fast upon us. So if you ever are in the middle of your revision and you have any questions, maybe something that I've mentioned that you want clarified, a quote that I've not explained in enough depth, questions about assessment objectives, questions about essay writing, anything at all, revision tips even, please feel free to ask in the comments. We will respond to all the questions that you might have. And we'll respond fairly fast. We know time is of the essence with exams coming up soon. So if you have any questions, as usual, post them in the comments. There'll be another video up soon, and we're almost done with Macbeth. So I hope you join us for the next video, and I hope that this one was helpful.